you a woman in medicine feeling overwhelmed and disconnected from the personal fulfillment that you desire? You're in the right place. Join Doctors Joanne and Aaron as they rewrite the rules for women in medicine. Let's begin.
Welcome to our show, Create Meaning in Medicine. I am here with my favorite co-host, Dr. Erin Hurley. And in the last episodes, we've been talking about this early time of the year, which is the time when we're recording the episodes, and how we start full of energy and with goals. And we talked about dreaming big and have the manifestation and having these big visions. And we love that. And we also talked about how sometimes, for different reasons, at this early time of the year, when the days are shorter and it's post holidays, we might not be feeling our best. And we talked about how maybe it would be helpful to think of what are some specific time management tools for this time of the year. And how can we recognize when we're struggling maybe more than we want to? And then what are some very specific strategies that we can apply right now to move forward in the way that we want to feel better, get that sense of joy and fulfillment? And we're lucky because that's one of Erin's expertise. I don't know how to say that in English well, in the things that she knows best. So I cannot wait to learn from Erin today. So, Erin, give us why this is important. What's your take on this topic?
One of the highlights is that when you think of women in medicine and healthcare providers in general, if our time in the day, the 24 hours is like a circle, it is so jam-packed full. Every minute is accounted for. Oftentimes we're expected to do 30 plus hours of work in a less than 24 hour day. Just impossible. And so it can just seem like, where do I even start? And that if you don't even recognize that there are different ways of doing it, because everybody's just as overwhelmed as you are, you may not even have awareness that it's possible to do things differently. And yet, I have found that with just a few minor changes in how you do your workflow, and it's not going to change the quality of it, but you can actually get significantly more productivity done with less time and energy spent. And how cool is that? And it doesn't take rocket science. It just takes paying attention to some of the research-based methods that why they're not teaching us this in medical school and residency and in ongoing CME regularly, I have no idea. But you might have heard me talk about some of these strategies before, because I want everyone in medicine using research-based methods on how to do the work so you can get it done more efficiently and without all the energy that you're expending currently.
My brain is going a million miles per hour and all the things that I want to ask you, and thinking of what I have struggled with and what some of the women I coach have struggled with, because I don't have time, I don't have energy. Those are the things that we hear the most. And as I was hearing you talk, I was thinking just about this week at work, where I work for a big institution, and our days need to be full of patients. There cannot be literally a minute where you're not seeing a patient. And then I was reviewing my emails, and they want us to do this update in our bio and add a page about us and make sure that the picture is updated. And then we have a department meeting, and then they asked us to volunteer for some social media, and we have to teach the residents and we have to teach the medical students. And I'm not here complaining about my job. I love my job. I'm just
Sounds like
saying,
more than 24 hours of
right?
work.
It's the
Even
reality.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm not yet complaining. I am not saying all the phone calls and the patients who are late, right? This is just good things that are on my plate right now. And I was thinking about it of when do they want me to do this if they are not providing me any space that they say, oh, we're going to blog this afternoon? So you have all these things. That would seem like such a luxury. And again, my story is mild in comparison. I don't mean to minimize. We all have our stories. And all that to say that if that's the first thing that's coming to my mind, hearing you say that, I wonder also, how does it feel for other women in medicine, and knowing that this is something that you are so good at coaching? What are you hearing a lot of the women in medicine struggling with it, with this topic?
I think there's a lot of lack of belief that something else is possible because they see how they do their workflow. They've never seen it done any differently. And they just go, oh, I guess this is just the way it has to be. And when I can shadow at a clinic that I'm working with, and within 15 minutes identify places where they might be able to save hours a day just by making a few pivots. When I can work with individuals on their charting and some of the people who struggle the most because they have the least efficient practices, they might be wasting upwards of 20 or even more hours a week on their uncompensated charting time. And just by implementing a few strategies, spending a few hours with me, they can save 15 to 20 hours a week every week. Like I said, it's not rocket science. So what I was hoping today, and these are some common themes, I'm going to keep sharing them because I want more healthcare providers, more women physicians to know about these, because I don't want you wasting a bunch of time and energy. But don't give up hope, because if you don't have hope that there's a different way possible, why would you even bother? And I've even had people who have successfully gone through my program, specifically my charting program, and say, oh my gosh, and they're sharing with their colleagues, I worked with Erin and I got all these great results. And they're like, oh, that won't work for me. My situation is different. And I'm like, well, let's see. It's worked for primary care providers. It's worked for inpatient medicine, outpatient medicine specialists, generalists, people who work for big organizations, people who work for small organizations. And yet they just are so resolved to say, nope, that's not going to work. Or maybe I tried something before and it didn't work. So that probably won't work either. So my hope would be that women physicians can find some hope and experiment, because the flip side of that is, what if it does work for you? What could be the outcome?
I was thinking of something that I tell myself all the time with a lot of love. I tell myself, Joanne, the hours do not have 120 minutes. They only have 60 minutes. So don't plan to do something that's impossible. And it comes from a good place where I'm like, sure I can. And I just need to do this and I'll do that. And then it's so easy. And that's something that I hear a lot also with the women uh, physicians that I coach, where it's the list of things that they have on their plate. It's so long. And then at the end of the day, they still feel like they're not doing enough. And I frequently in my coaching have to go back and then say, let's review. What have you done? What have you accomplished? And like you said, where is your time going? And is it aligned with what's important to you right now? Is it aligned with what's making you feel well? What's really important, those priorities, and how much time we misuse, so that I don't use waste. And part of it feels kind of external, like, oh, you don't get it. It's because they're asking me to do all these things, as I was sharing. And also then thinking, and what else can I do? And are there times that I can reframe a bit and shift and create this pockets of time to add what I really need to do and what I really want to do? And I've heard you many times talking about those strategies. So I would love if you can give us a few kind of laser focused strategies that we can start implementing right now.
And I don't want to minimize our listeners' circumstances. I'm not saying you are not being asked to do more than 24 hours of work in a 24-hour day. I'm saying that even when you're being asked to do too much, there are things under your control. Where I look at it is, instead of putting time and energy that's going in all these scattered directions, we are aligning the energy, aligning the momentum so that the arrows are more pointing in the same direction, and so that it kind of has this momentum and multiplier effect instead of working against each other. Because you can think of energy, let's talk basic physics, right? If we're playing tug of war and I'm on one end of the rope and Joanne's on the other end of the rope, and we're each pulling very hard, giving it our all in opposite directions, guess what? We're putting a lot of time and energy and effort, and the rope is not moving, except that her strength training is more intense than mine, so she'd probably win. But what if Joanne and I were both pulling on this rope in the same direction? Imagine how far we could move it when we're aligning that. So I'm going to focus on 3 very specific areas that I have found instrumental in sometimes freeing up multiple hours a week or even day for my clients. The first one is interruptions and distractions. So if you can remove as many interruptions and distractions from your day as possible, I've shared this before, that every time you're interrupted, you are disrupting. It takes you about 23 to 25 minutes to get back to that workflow that you were in. So think about trying to complete a chart note. Think about having an intense conversation with someone. Think about not mindless activity like folding the laundry, but something that requires focus and attention, and you just got a knock on your door, a text on your phone, and that disrupted your workflow. You can just add 23 more to 25 more minutes onto your workday, because you're going to be working inefficiently every time you're interrupted. Imagine being able to erase a percentage of your interruptions and distractions to only when it's needed, or scheduling those interruptions by your MA, by your staff. I will be available for you to check in. So instead of every time they have something on their list, they batch them together if it's not an emergency and interrupt you once and go through a list of 10 things instead of interrupting you 10 different times and adding 23 to 25 minutes with each interruption. And you can be your own interrupter by distractions, cell phone notifications, email notifications. What are you getting notified of coming through? Teams messages. Think of all those different ways that we get interrupted. What do you have in your control to still safely produce high quality care for your patients and remove as many interruptions and distractions as possible? Huge, huge place where you can recapture significant amounts of time with very simple efforts. Number 2, unless you have something to comment on that, Joanne.
No, just what comes to mind is where we can take accountability for ourselves. And like I've told, I have a friend that I'll go through my little Instagram breaks that I'll just scroll, and I'll share a few things with her. And then I tell her, if I've sent you too many in a row, call me out. It means that I'm stuck and I am wasting time, and that I have to be honest with myself. And when I'm telling myself, oh, I don't have time for this, reframe it to, you are choosing to spend your time somewhere else and not making this other thing that you say that you want to do a priority. And that's not always easy. And of course, like I always say, no judgment, just compassion. But it's a good reminder of what you're saying, where there are a lot of external distractions that we might not be able to fully control, and we can still limit what we add to our plate in terms of distractions, and then recognizing the need. Because I know I've learned from myself that if I get stuck in one of those Instagram spirals, I probably need something else. I'm probably overwhelmed. I am tired. I need a mental break. And then I just ask myself, is there a different way I can get that? And I'll just go talk to my secretary, which is, probably more beneficial for my mental and emotional well-being. So it's a good reminder, and for you to question what would that be for you? How can you recognize it and how to reframe it?
And it also taps into healthy boundaries. For example, when I was working at my medical director job, and my sister, who was an entrepreneur and worked for herself, would text me throughout the day, I asked her to set boundaries and said, if there's an emergency, call me or send me a message, but otherwise, please refrain from doing so between 8 in the morning and 5:30 p.m. So we can teach others to help us have fewer interruptions and distractions by setting healthy boundaries. Number two is I'm going to use the term mega batch. And what that means is doing similar work at the same time versus toggling, which means flipping back and forth and back and forth. One of the strategies I teach, if you're doing patient care in an outpatient setting, to me, mega batching would be seeing your patients, prepping for the next patient, finishing your chart for the patients that you're seeing in real time, just getting in that workflow, not seeing your patient, looking at your emails, responding to your MA's messages. That's toggling from one to another and to another, which is, again, causing this flipping back and forth rapidly, which is exhausting. So we're also talking about you have limited energy. We need to save that as well as your time. Can you batch similar aspects of your work where you're doing the same thing over and over again? You're in that same flow of work, and then batch the other parts of your work. So maybe there's 3 different main categories, 5 main categories, but batching it together. And so you can get into rapid succession, kind of like a factory worker, right? They're doing the same thing over and over and over again. It's going to be really fast. Then going and building the whole car with one person, very inefficient. So think about those efficiency factors of how can I batch similar activities together that use a similar part of my brain, which may mean some things like reviewing your processes and your policies and procedures might happen, for a 1-hour block once a week, but not dribbled into your patient care days. And so, or batching all of those updates that Joanne said she was being asked about with her bio and her, the social media, whatever those things are. Maybe that's, a part of one afternoon, not trying to fit it in little 5-minute segments in between all of her other work. And that can help you be more likely to get into flow state, but it takes 60 to 90 minutes to get there. So think about how many times during your day are you doing the same type of activity without interruptions for 60 to 90 minutes? Very rare. And yet you can get work done up to 5 times faster if you can figure out how to carve out some flow state segments in your day and in your week. So that's number 2. We talked about decreasing interruptions and distractions, mega batching versus toggling to get into flow state. You ready for number 3, Joanne, and our listener?
Please. My pen is ready.
Okay. Delegate, delegate, and delegate, and get rid of the guilt and perfectionism that oftentimes goes with that, which means having your front desk staff, having your MA, having your nurse, having your colleagues work up to the top of their capacity within their licensing or within their work, so that you are doing the things that only you can do, seeing your patients, doing your charting and billing, minimizing what you're saying yes to so that you can focus intensely on those things that you must do. And keep in mind, when you say yes to something that isn't a you thing, you're forcing yourself to say no to something else, which might be family time, which might be having a time for a meal or taking a lunch break, pouring into your own self-care. So when you add up all of these 3 areas, it can sometimes create a little bit more blank space, white space into your schedule. And hopefully you don't say yes to something else and fill it right back up. And it can take a little bit of that maddening, frantic pace out of your day, which will then elevate your energy, elevate your focus so that you can be more mindful and create even more capacity for those things that you don't see that there's any way to fit into your life.
This is magic to me. This is like, how do you say, like pixie dust? Because I believe this is constant work that we need to remind ourselves. So thank you for this information, because even though I'm with you and I do this work, I find myself sometimes stuck in the overwhelm of I don't have time and when am I going to do this and I can't. And it's so good to remind ourselves that, yes, it's common for us to feel this way. We're not alone in it, but that there are things that we can do. There are things that we can control, and that it starts with the belief that we can, and connecting with that hope that there are tools that we can practice, that we can set and get into our schedule, and you will slowly see that benefit. And I always learn so much from you and the reminders of recognizing and limiting the interruptions and distractions. And we can all do better at this. And I love the reminder of the getting into flow with doing things that are similar. And this is really good for our brain. I think so many of us would take pride into the multitasking, and we have so much research. We've talked about that in this podcast, that that's not good and it's not efficient. So pay attention to what Erin said, because this is the way to save energy and be efficient. And I love the reminder with a little bidding loving nudge of delegating without guilt. It's so important, and I feel like I need to read these notes on a regular basis, and this is a message that I know that I will review with the women I coach as well. So thank you for this work. Erin, is there something that we haven't talked about today that's important for us to remember?
One of the topics we talk about a lot is role modeling. And so I don't want our listener getting interrupted, but we can also role model to others the lack of interrupting for their benefit, whether that's our MA, our colleagues. So pausing and asking, is it necessary to interrupt this person right now? And how might a better way be to get this communication across that's needed? So we can role model better ways, and then kind of have that ripple effect where we're not only helping open up our own schedule, but helping others find ways to do so as well. Much needed in medicine today.
Totally. What an important nugget to remind us all. And if you've loved this episode as much as I have, maybe you have the same amount of notes as I do, we would love it if you could go to the part of the show where you can rate and review. Leave us an honest rating. We want to get better. We want to be more present for you. And if you can give us a review, what have you liked? What would you want to see more of? This is how we will get better for you. And we look forward to keep on connecting with you, and stay tuned for our next episode.
Do you want exclusive resources and the opportunity to connect with us? Then visit createmeaninginmedicine.com now, where you'll dive deeper into how you can create meaning in medicine. And if you're serious about optimizing your results, take 2 quick steps now. Connect with us on the website and tune in to the next episode.